Hi, I'm Lottie Smith and I'm here with Little Inventors to teach you some tips and tricks on adding movement to your models. You can make movement in lots of different ways, so let's look at a few now. So to begin with, how we could make some movement by using a tube. So this one's a poster tube, but you could also use a kitchen roll as well. I'm going to do it around this big one so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So one way of creating some movement would be you get your tube and you get yourself a long piece of cardboard. Now, you want to make sure that you're using the corrugation like we spoke about in the last video, and that the lines, so that when I say corrugation, I mean the lines are going across like this. And that's so that when you put your tube down, you can wrap the cardboard around. So what you want to do is wrap the cardboard around quite tight, like that. And you can use some glue, but it might be a little bit better to use some tape. So I've got some wide tape here. So if you just cut yourself off a piece of tape, and I've got some that's the same colour as cardboard, but don't worry if you don't, because whatever colour the tape is, or if it's see-through, you can make that a feature of your design. So you want to stick it on nice and strong on that. Now it's on tight enough so it doesn't fall off, but it's still loose so it can turn round. Now, with this tube, you can make all sorts of things with a tube, but one of the things you can do with the tube is you could make yourself some kind of controller for your wrist, and then you could turn it round. So you could draw buttons on here, or you could stick on different lids. So one of the things you could do is the toilet roll tube that we've had earlier with the flanges on, you can use these to stick them on to here. So I'll take it off, and I can do it really quickly. It rolls about a bit, so you might want to get a bit of help holding it steady while you do this. You don't have to stick it on with sticky tape, you can stick it on with glue, and it might actually be a little bit stronger if you use glue. So if you've got these flaps here that are overlapping, make sure that you're not sticking these cardboard bits down onto the actual solid tube, because if you hold that down onto the tube, you're not going to be able to spin it round, but if you hold it loose, it'll spin round. So now you've got something like that on, you can turn it round like this. So you can keep adding objects, and it could be lots of things. If you wanted to, you could add 4 more, and then it would be on the end, and it would be a bit like a wind turbine. All sorts of things that you could use that technique for. So one of the other things you could add onto it is, before, when I showed you about cutting a circle out, I used this tube. So we've got the piece that we cut out before with this, and it'll fit over the tube because that's the tube that you used, and then that'll spin round. So at the moment that's a little bit of a funny shape, but you could cut it down. So I would suggest that you use a pencil and you draw this first. So I'm just guessing the shape, so it's not going to be very even. Oop. So if you're cutting out like this, make sure you leave a good enough gap here, because if you cut this too thin, it will become a little bit weak and it might break. So you can put that back on, and you can see it's a little bit like a wind turbine, but it's not perfect. So it's like that. So there's all sorts of things you can do with turning things around using a tube. And remember, you can use a kitchen roll if you don't have a solid tube at home.